The streetlights flickered ominously as Sergeant Maya Johnson noticed the same motorcycle headlight in her rearview mirror for the third consecutive turn. Her heart skipped a beat when she realized the rider had been trailing her since she left the base gym 20 minutes ago. "This can't be happening," she whispered, gripping the steering wheel tighter as she made another random turn down Maple Street. The bike followed, maintaining the same distance, like a predator stalking its prey. Maya, a decorated 28-year-old army sergeant with 2 tours in Afghanistan under her belt, had faced enemy fire and improvised explosive devices, but nothing had prepared her for this moment of vulnerability on the quiet suburban streets of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Her military training kicked in as she assessed the situation. It was 11:47 p.m., the streets were nearly deserted, and her phone showed only 2 bars of signal. The mysterious rider wore a dark helmet and leather jacket, making identification impossible. What made Maya's blood run cold was the deliberate nature of the pursuit. Every turn she made, every attempt to lose the follower, was met with persistent tracking. Hey everyone, if you're enjoying this intense story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I want to know where you're watching from. Comment your city below and use the word justice if you think Maya will get the justice she deserves. As Maya approached the intersection of Pine and Oak Streets, she faced a crucial decision that would determine her fate. Should she head toward the well-lit main road where witnesses might be present, or take the shortcut through the industrial district where she could potentially lose her pursuer but risk being trapped? The motorcycle's engine revved menacingly behind her, and Maya realized this wasn't a random encounter. Someone had been watching her, studying her routine, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But what did they want from a soldier who had dedicated her life to serving her country? Maya's mind raced through the possibilities as she navigated the darkened streets of Fayetteville. Her military-issued Jeep Cherokee felt like both protection and a trap, sturdy enough to withstand an attack, but conspicuous enough to be easily tracked. The base gym had been unusually empty tonight, with only a handful of soldiers completing their evening workouts. She remembered the strange conversation she'd overheard in the locker room earlier that week. 2 civilian contractors had been discussing the Johnson situation in hushed tones, falling silent when they noticed her presence. At the time, Maya had dismissed it as coincidence. Johnson was a common surname after all. But now, with the motorcycle's headlight burning like a malevolent eye in her mirror, those words took on a sinister meaning. The rider maintained perfect distance, never getting close enough for Maya to read the license plate, never falling far enough behind to lose visual contact. This level of surveillance suggested professional training, possibly military or law enforcement background. Maya's deployment experiences had taught her to recognize tactical pursuit patterns, and this felt disturbingly familiar. Her phone buzzed with a text from her younger brother, Marcus. "Sis, saw the news about the investigation. Stay safe." Maya's heart sank as she realized the connection. 3 weeks ago, she had filed a formal complaint against Colonel Richard Brennan for sexual harassment and discrimination. The complaint had detailed incidents spanning 6 months, including inappropriate comments, blocked promotions, and retaliation against soldiers who supported her. The motorcycle suddenly accelerated, closing the gap between them. Maya could see the rider's gloved hands gripping the handlebars with practiced precision. This wasn't road rage or random violence. This was calculated intimidation, designed to silence her before the military tribunal scheduled for next week. Maya's training kicked in as she prepared for evasive maneuvers, knowing that her next decisions could mean the difference between justice and becoming another silenced voice in the military's dark history of covering up misconduct. Party 3, 400 Palavras. The motorcycle suddenly veered into the adjacent lane, pulling alongside Maya's Jeep at the red light on Bragg Boulevard. Through the tinted visor, she couldn't make out the rider's face, but she noticed something that made her blood freeze. A small military insignia on the jacket sleeve, barely visible under the streetlight. This wasn't some random stalker. This was someone from her own world, someone who knew her routines, her vulnerabilities. Maya's hands trembled as she reached for her service weapon, secured in the glove compartment per military protocol. But as her fingers touched the cold metal, she hesitated. Drawing a weapon on a public street could escalate the situation beyond control, potentially giving her enemies the excuse they needed to discredit her testimony. The light turned green, and the motorcycle shot forward, weaving through traffic with aggressive precision. Her phone rang, displaying an unknown number. Against her better judgment, Maya answered using her Bluetooth system. A digitally distorted voice filled the car. "Sergeant Johnson, you've been asking the wrong questions. Some secrets are worth more than one soldier's career." The line went dead before she could respond. Maya's mind raced through her recent activities. Besides the harassment complaint, she had been researching discrepancies in supply chain contracts for the base commissary. Irregularities that suggested someone was skimming funds meant for soldier welfare programs. Her investigation had uncovered a network of inflated invoices and phantom vendors, all traced back to companies with ties to senior military personnel. The motorcycle reappeared in her mirror, this time accompanied by a dark sedan. Maya realized she was now being followed by multiple vehicles, suggesting a coordinated effort to intimidate or eliminate her. Her military training identified this as a classic pincer movement, one vehicle to track, another to block escape routes. As she approached the intersection near the Walmart Supercenter, Maya made a split-second decision that would change everything. Instead of heading toward the safety of the main base entrance, she turned into the sprawling parking lot of the 24-hour shopping center. The bright lights and security cameras would provide witnesses, but they would also trap her in a confined space with limited escape routes. The motorcycle and sedan followed her into the parking lot, their headlights creating an ominous convoy in the late-night darkness. Maya parked near the store entrance, her heart pounding as she realized that whatever was about to happen would determine not just her fate, but the fate of every soldier who had ever faced retaliation for speaking truth to power. The rider dismounted, removing the helmet to reveal a face that would shatter everything Maya thought she knew about loyalty, betrayal, and the true cost of military justice. The helmet came off in slow motion, revealing the weathered face of Master Sergeant Patricia Williams, Maya's former mentor, and the woman who had recommended her for promotion just 6 months ago. Patricia's grey-streaked hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her eyes held a mixture of regret and determination that Maya had never seen before. "Patricia," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible through the Bluetooth system as she watched her mentor approach the Jeep. The woman who had taught her everything about military leadership, who had been like a second mother during her darkest moments overseas, was now standing in a Walmart parking lot at midnight, having stalked her through the streets of Fayetteville. The sedan's doors opened, and 2 men in civilian clothes emerged. Maya recognized them immediately. They were the same contractors she had overheard discussing the Johnson situation in the gym locker room. Everything clicked into place with terrifying clarity. This wasn't just about Colonel Brennan's harassment. It was about the supply chain investigation that threatened to expose a corruption network reaching the highest levels of base command. Patricia approached the driver's side window, her expression pained but resolute. "Maya, honey, you need to listen to me very carefully. What you think you've discovered about those contracts, it's bigger than you understand. There are people involved who will do anything to protect their interests. People like you." Maya's voice cracked with betrayal and disbelief. "People like my daughter," Patricia replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sarah's medical bills for her cancer treatment, the experimental therapy that insurance won't cover. I never meant for it to go this far, but when you started digging into those supply records, you threatened everything I've worked for to keep her alive." The revelation hit Maya like a physical blow. Patricia's daughter, Sarah, whom Maya had met at numerous family barbecues, had been battling leukemia for 3 years. The experimental treatment in Germany cost over $300,000, money that a master sergeant's salary could never provide. Maya realized she was facing an impossible choice between justice and compassion, between exposing corruption and destroying the woman who had shaped her military career. Patricia's confession hung in the air like smoke from a battlefield, thick with the weight of moral compromise and desperate love. Maya stared at her mentor through the windshield, seeing for the first time the deep lines of stress and exhaustion that had been hidden beneath Patricia's military bearing. The woman who had once told her that integrity was non-negotiable had been living a double life, skimming funds meant for soldier welfare to pay for her daughter's life-saving treatment. "How long?" Maya asked, her voice steady despite the emotional storm raging inside her. 18 months, Patricia admitted, her shoulders sagging with the weight of her secret. It started small, just redirecting some surplus medical supplies that would have expired anyway, but Sarah's condition worsened and the costs God, Maya, the costs kept climbing. The insurance company denied coverage for the experimental treatment, calling it investigational, while my baby was dying. One of the contractors stepped forward, his hand resting ominously on something concealed beneath his jacket. This conversation needs to end now. Sergeant Johnson, you have a choice to make. Walk away from your investigation, withdraw your complaint against Colonel Brennan, and everyone goes home safe tonight. Maya's training kicked in as she assessed the tactical situation. 3 potential hostiles, limited cover, civilian witnesses inside the store, but none in the immediate vicinity. Her service weapon was within reach, but drawing it would escalate the situation beyond any hope of peaceful resolution. "And if I refuse?" Maya asked, though she already knew the answer. The contractor's smile was cold and professional. "Then you become another tragic statistic, a soldier who couldn't handle the stress of military life, who made some poor decisions late at night. These things happen more often than you'd think." Patricia's face crumpled with anguish. "Maya, please. I know what I'm asking is wrong, but Sarah is only 19. She has her whole life ahead of her if she can just get this treatment. I can't let her die because I was too proud to bend the rules." The moment stretched into eternity as Maya faced the most difficult decision of her military career. In the distance, she could hear the faint sound of sirens. Whether approaching or departing, she couldn't tell. But she knew that whatever choice she made in the next few seconds would define not just her future, but the futures of everyone standing in this parking lot. Maya's mind flashed to her own family, her younger brother Marcus, who looked up to her as a role model, and her parents, who had sacrificed everything to put her through college before she enlisted. She thought about the young soldiers on base, who saw her as proof that the system could work, that speaking truth to power was possible without destroying your career. But she also thought about Sarah Williams, a bright 19-year-old girl whose only crime was getting sick in a country where healthcare could bankrupt a family. "Patricia," Maya said softly, "you taught me that leadership means making the hard choices, even when they cost us everything. You taught me that integrity isn't negotiable, that the moment we compromise our values, we lose the right to wear this uniform." Patricia's eyes filled with tears. "I know what I taught you, baby girl. But I also know what it's like to watch your child suffer while you have the power to help them. I know what it's like to choose between your principles and your family." The contractor grew impatient, his hand moving closer to his concealed weapon. "Time's up, Sergeant." "What's it going to be?" Maya made her decision with the clarity that had served her well in combat. She slowly reached for her phone, her movements deliberate and non-threatening. "I'm calling base security. All of you are going to surrender peacefully, and we're going to work this out through proper channels." "Maya, no," Patricia pleaded. "If this gets out, Sarah will die. The treatment has to start next week or it'll be too late." "Then we'll find another way," Maya replied, her voice firm with conviction. "But we're not going to build Sarah's future on the backs of soldiers who depend on those supply funds for their own families." The contractor's hand moved toward his weapon, but before he could draw it, the parking lot erupted in blinding light as 3 military police vehicles surrounded them, their spotlights turning night into day. Maya's call to base security had been made 20 minutes ago, when she first realized she was being followed. The military police moved with practiced efficiency, their weapons drawn and trained on the contractors while shouting commands that echoed across the empty parking lot. Maya stepped out of her jeep with her hands visible, her military ID held high to identify herself as the complainant who had called for backup. "Sergeant Johnson, are you injured?" called out Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, the lead MP whom Maya recognized from the base gym. "Negative, but I need Master Sergeant Williams and these 2 civilians taken into custody for questioning regarding the supply chain investigation and tonight's intimidation attempt," Maya replied, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had just made peace with a difficult decision. Patricia Williams stood frozen, her face a mask of despair and resignation. The contractors, however, were not going quietly. The taller one, whom Maya now recognized as David Chen from the base contracting office, made a desperate attempt to reach his vehicle. He was tackled by 2 MPs before he could take 3 steps, his briefcase spilling open to reveal thick stacks of documents and what appeared to be multiple cell phones. "Sarah," Patricia whispered as the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. "Maya, please, you have to understand." "I do understand," Maya interrupted, her voice softer now but still resolute. "And I'm going to help her. But not this way. Never this way." As the MPs loaded the suspects into their vehicles, Maya noticed something that made her heart skip. One of the cell phones from Chen's briefcase was buzzing with an incoming call. The name on the screen read, Colonel Brennan. The harassment complaint, the supply chain corruption, the intimidation attempt, it was all connected, a web of misconduct that reached far higher than Maya had initially suspected. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez approached her with an evidence bag. Sergeant Johnson, we're going to need a full statement, but first, are you aware that Master Sergeant Williams has been cooperating with our investigation for the past week? Maya's world tilted on its axis. What? She came forward about the supply chain irregularities and agreed to help us gather evidence on the larger corruption network. Tonight was supposed to be a controlled operation to get the contractors to reveal their connections to senior leadership. The revelation hit Maya like a physical blow. Patricia hadn't been stalking her to intimidate her into silence. She had been protecting her from the real threat while gathering evidence for the military police investigation. The tears in Patricia's eyes hadn't been from guilt over corruption, but from the impossible position of maintaining her cover while watching her protégé suffer through what appeared to be betrayal. The motorcycle pursuit was staged? Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Partially, Rodriguez explained. Master Sergeant Williams was following you to ensure your safety, but Chen and his partner took the opportunity to escalate their intimidation tactics. When Williams realized they were planning to harm you, she broke cover to intervene. Maya looked at Patricia, who was now sitting in the back of an MP vehicle, her handcuffs removed. The older woman's expression was a mixture of relief and exhaustion, the weight of weeks of undercover work finally lifting from her shoulders. The corruption network is extensive, Rodriguez continued. It involves at least 3 senior officers, multiple civilian contractors, and has been operating for over 2 years. The funds stolen from soldier welfare programs total nearly $2.3 million. And Sarah's medical treatment? Maya asked, the question that had been burning in her mind since Patricia's confession. Legitimate. Master Sergeant Williams has been paying for her daughter's treatment through a combination of military family assistance programs, fundraising, and her own savings. She never took a penny from the stolen funds, which is why we approached her to help with the investigation. Maya felt her knees weaken as the full scope of the situation became clear. Patricia had been fighting 2 battles simultaneously, one to save her daughter's life through legal means, and another to expose the corruption that was stealing from military families who might be facing their own medical crises. Colonel Brennan, Maya asked, though she already suspected the answer. Under arrest as of 20 minutes ago, Rodriguez confirmed. Your harassment complaint was the key that unlocked everything. His retaliation against you led us to the supply chain irregularities, which led us to the larger network. The next morning, Maya sat in the base commander's office, sunlight streaming through the windows as she gave her final statement to the investigating team. The events of the previous night felt surreal in the harsh light of day, but the evidence spread across the conference table told a story of corruption, courage, and the complex moral choices that define military service. General Patricia Hawkins, the base commander, reviewed the documents with a mixture of professional detachment and personal disgust. Sergeant Johnson, your complaint against Colonel Brennan was the catalyst that exposed a corruption network that has been stealing from military families for over 2 years. The evidence gathered through Master Sergeant Williams' undercover work will result in court-martial proceedings for 3 senior officers and federal charges for 7 civilian contractors. Maya glanced at Patricia Williams, who sat across the table looking exhausted but relieved. The older woman had been released after her role in the investigation was confirmed, but the strain of the past weeks was evident in every line of her face. Sarah's treatment? Maya asked, the question that had haunted her since the parking lot confrontation. Fully funded through the Military Family Life Counseling Program and a special hardship grant, General Hawkins replied. She begins the experimental therapy in Germany next week, with all expenses covered. The military takes care of its own, Sergeant Johnson, especially when that family has sacrificed so much in service to others. Patricia's eyes filled with tears of gratitude and relief. Maya, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I wanted to tell you about the investigation, but you were protecting me, Maya finished, and protecting the investigation. I understand now. The general stood, her expression grave but proud. Sergeant Johnson, your courage in filing the initial complaint and your actions last night have saved this command from a scandal that could have destroyed careers and lives. You've also ensured that the families who depend on our support programs will continue to receive the assistance they need. As Maya left the commander's office, she felt the weight of the past months lifting from her shoulders. The harassment, the investigation, the terrifying chase through Fayetteville's streets, it had all led to this moment of justice and vindication, but more importantly, it had led to a young woman getting the medical treatment she needed to live, and to a military community that was stronger and more honest, because someone had been willing to speak truth to power, regardless of the personal cost. The sun was shining brightly as Maya walked across the base, her uniform crisp and her head held high, knowing that she had honored both her oath as a soldier and her commitment to protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. 6 months later, Maya stood before a packed auditorium at the Pentagon, receiving the Meritorious Service Medal for her role in exposing the corruption network that had stolen millions from military families. The investigation had expanded beyond Fort Bragg, uncovering similar schemes at bases across the country and leading to comprehensive reforms in military contracting procedures. Patricia Williams sat in the front row, her daughter Sarah beside her, healthy and radiant, after successful completion of her treatment in Germany. The experimental therapy had worked, and Sarah was now cancer-free, planning to start college in the fall with a full scholarship, funded by the military community that had rallied around her family. Colonel Brennan and his co-conspirators had been court-martialed and sentenced to military prison, their careers and reputations destroyed by their own greed and misconduct. The civilian contractors faced federal charges that would likely result in decades behind bars. "The courage to speak truth to power," General Hawkins said as she pinned the medal to Maya's uniform, "is what separates true leaders from those who simply wear the rank. Sergeant Johnson, you have demonstrated that integrity is not negotiable, even when the personal cost seems unbearable." Maya's family watched from the audience, her parents beaming with pride, and her brother Marcus recording every moment on his phone. The young soldiers from her unit had traveled from Fort Bragg to witness the ceremony, their faces reflecting the hope that the system could work when people were willing to fight for what was right. As the ceremony concluded, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The fear, the betrayal, the midnight chase through empty streets. It had all been worth it to ensure that military families would continue to receive the support they deserved. The military was stronger because someone had been willing to stand up, speak out and fight for justice, regardless of the personal cost. 2 years later, Maya Johnson was promoted to Staff Sergeant and transferred to the Pentagon, where she worked in the newly created Military Family Advocacy Office, a department established as a direct result of her investigation. Her job was to ensure that the reforms implemented after the corruption scandal were being followed, and that military families had a voice in the system designed to support them. Patricia Williams had retired from the military and now worked as a civilian contractor for the same advocacy office, using her experience to help other families navigate the complex world of military benefits and support programs. Sarah Williams was thriving in her sophomore year at Georgetown University, studying international relations, with plans to join the State Department after graduation. The corruption network that had seemed so powerful and untouchable had crumbled when confronted with the simple truth that some things are worth fighting for, regardless of the personal cost. The millions of dollars stolen from military families had been recovered and redistributed to the programs they were meant to support. Maya kept a photo on her desk from that night in the Walmart parking lot, not of the arrests or the confrontation, but of the moment when Patricia Williams first held her daughter after Sarah's successful treatment. It served as a daily reminder that courage comes in many forms, and that sometimes the greatest victories are measured not in medals or promotions, but in lives saved and families kept together. If you watched until the end, comment, "I watched until the final" below. This incredible story of courage, corruption, and redemption shows us that standing up for what's right is never easy, but it's always worth it. Maya Johnson's bravery not only exposed a massive corruption network, but also saved lives and strengthened the military community. What did you think of this story? Share your thoughts in the comments and let me know what other military stories you'd like to hear. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our latest stories of courage and justice. Click on the video that appears on your screen now for another incredible story of military heroes who changed everything.